Oh, by the way, um, Final Fantasy XVI. To extend my own commentary on it, I would say that we haven't seen a lore that's of this quality out of the game since the days of 12. Not, and that's with 14 excluded specifically because it's an online game. 14 has a great lore. The development team behind the two of them being the same is one of the reasons why I decided to give this Let's Play a chance in the first place. I liked the characters enough that I felt the sort of, desire to see where the storyline was going, Um, but I wanted to comment on, the three million sales thing and the fact, well, I mean, okay, first of all, the PlayStation 5's install base is a lot less than the PlayStation's 4's. A lot fewer of us actually own one. I mean, I have my copy of it, but it hasn't even been hooked up yet since, it was bought. A TV out there is blocked by a bunch of crap. Um, I don't know. I mean, I felt that it was an expensive paperweight, but then I came to realize that having an old version of it that you could crack and do things with and jailbreak would have been nice. But yeah. So in the future, I'll probably be pre-ordering my units just to get the earliest copies of them. But even though they're going to be an overglorified paperweight for a while, I don't want the latest firmware because I want to hack mine. But yeah, so the thing is just that my frustration though when it comes to this and this whole thing, I've yet to see a video that shares my perspective on 15 at this point on the platform. I didn't feel that 15 had any redeeming features at all. It's just a dumpster fire in its entirety. There's nothing good or redeemable about Final Fantasy 15. It is garbage in its entirety, and the world would be better off without it at all. There is not a single thing that I loved about 15 at all. I fucking hate it, and I continue to have an unmitigated hatred of it that is filled with nothing but hate for literally 100% of the game. The bromance story is such a dumpster fire of a story that we didn't need it, and we'd be better off if we just had if the series had not suffered it at all. And I think that it's disappointing that 15 managed to sell as many units as it did because at that point everybody had been so in love with Square Enix for so long that Square Enix was able to get away with anything, and you know everybody just bought in, and then a whole bunch of buyer's remorse began to set in very quickly. So it was like it did well in its first week, and then sales tanked as everybody realized that it was trash. And it's just like, I don't know where to start, but I guess I would start with the fact that like Luna Freya shows up only to be instantaneously killed within like 10 minutes of the storyline. Ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, if I, the sad part is this game was going on for 10 plus years and yet still manages to feel like it was rushed as hell, and we all know why. Because it's been extensively covered here on YouTube that the storyline that was behind like 13 versus 13 would have been a much better storyline, but of course that storyline would have been banned in certain countries. And it's just like Final Fantasy XV's lore does not function without the features that would have been banned in certain countries. Like, I'm sorry, the storyline is a fucking pile of shit without them, and the world and should have just been scrapped and thrown out. The project should have been canceled. And the world is in a much worse state for the fact that this game exists in the first place. I don't. I have never felt this negative about a Final Fantasy entry in my entire life. I mean, I hated Mystic Quest. This just absolutely, like, Mystic Quest is better than this pile of shit. This is the worst. I think I've ever seen out of Square Enix. And it's almost like they should have known better. Was the thought that was going through my head when I was going through it. I mean, I watched somebody else play it because the combat system had already evolved to the point where I was just no longer interested in the combat. So I watched a let's play of it because, despite that, this company has always had pretty stellar lore. And then I walked away and I watched a let's play of it, and the guy that I did didn't didn't play any of the didn't do any of the side quests that would have actually engaged in any character development between the characters. And you know the problem, though, in saying this and confessing this is just that even if I had sat through watching the let's plays and sitting through the content in which somebody, there was character development behind these guys, there just wasn't anywhere to go with these characters that would have made them engaging or made me give a shit about literally any of them. I have literally no interest in watching a fucking bromance storyline. I mean, I want the time that I invested in this garbage heap back. And then, of course, there are the people that are like, oh, you got to watch Kingsglaive, otherwise you're not going to understand the storyline. And it's just like, this storyline is beyond redemption at this point. It's been driven into the ground. And I mean, we all know why. I mean, it basically, it's sad that it comes down to this, but it's like, it's basically because China, because of self-censorship by Square Enix and Square Enix's damnable tendency towards being overly cautious and its fear of being banned in certain countries and getting, and restricted to 18 plus rating in certain parts of the world. I mean, 15 was just an unmitigated and relentless disaster. And I don't know why we have to have so many channels on here that are like, I loved it despite all these features that were removed from it. I'm like, I hate it, and most especially because of the features and that storyline that were removed from it. I mean, like, and then this giant, Square Enix stopped commenting on Versus 13 because they said it just made fans basically demand, 13 rather than 15. And I'm sitting here like, yeah, I'm not sorry about it. I think that the game that would have specifically been banned in certain parts of the world would have been the storyline that would have actually functioned. The one that we have it's been cut, like, there was one development team and at first that was making an actually functional storyline, and then a whole bunch of new developers come online and everything, and it's become evident that it's not gonna sell in certain parts of the world. Some of the developers were able to point that out, that it would have been banned in certain parts of the world, and their concerns started leading them to scrap the storyline and pull elements out of it, and then try some. And then, of course, after years and years and years of these removals, Square Enix throws a deadline on them, and they try desperately to cobble the pile of shit that they've managed, that is remaining after they've pulled out all of these elements that would have made the storyline like something that was even passable and didn't just get an outright fucking F rating that this game deserved. I mean, it really does. I mean, it really, this was a failure. It was not an A, a B, a C, or even a D. It was a fucking F minus. Like, this is garbage that we got out of them. And I mean, one man's trash, I guess, is always another's treasure, but it is my trash. I mean, I don't think that this game really, what they managed to cobble back together, is even redeemable. And that's, I think, what pisses me off about so many people's takes on it. Is just kind of like, yo, you need to watch all this other external content to make the whole thing make sense. And it's just like, I don't think that there's any helping this pile of shit anymore. I mean, I couldn't care less about its fucking bromance at all. I'm somebody that has been a shipper when it comes to anime for so long, but of course, being a straight person myself and being attracted to women, I definitely prefer, straight romances. It's just color, a bias that I have, although not so against watching two women, but that's another story entirely. I mean, I definitely like the Willow and Tara romance in Buffy, which, by the way, doesn't get explicit anywhere, so it's not like it's just eye candy for you as the viewer. So yeah, I mean, I just I feel like very frustrated with it, and many of the other channels here that talk about 15. I didn't find anything enjoyable about this. I watched the Let's Play, and I was, I can't believe I managed to get to the end. I think I was hoping it would get good eventually, and it never did. It never really went anywhere interesting. And I think I should have known that it was going to be like the moment that it basically jumped the shark is when Luna Freya shows up only to get killed instantly, because it's like you have all this anticipation about where he's going and who he's going to meet, and you're like all excited about it. Like, when are we finally going to meet her? When are we finally going to meet her? And then you get to that point, and it's just like, and she's dead almost instantaneously. And like there's this whole like you're not allowed to prefer Stella over Luna Freya sort of rule that they've tried to push down people's throats, but it's just like, because you didn't know Stella, you didn't ever actually get to see Stella, and it's just like, this is bullshit in such a huge way. This rule is bullshit because it's like, we didn't get to see Luna Freya either. She shows up and then instantaneously dies. So I mean, like, what, like, how is she any better? And it's just like the Stella romance that was hypothetical sounded at least intriguing and interesting. I wanted to see it play out, and then it just didn't. And it's like Square Enix views it as like poisonous for us to know about what 13 was supposed to be, for our understanding of this, and it's just, I'm sorry, but to me there is no like damage to be done there, because the way that I feel about 15 is just that it's garbage. I mean, if you came here and like broke the disc that I have of it in half, I don't think I would give a shit. It just throw it in the trash. Like, this game was not like, there are channels on here that will say that it was a mediocre disappointment, and I'm just like sitting here like, this wasn't mediocre. It was garbage. It was a fucking trash heap and complete pile of shit from a company that has historically been incredibly good at making storylines that were at least halfway decent, and it has been a hallmark of them as a company. I'm not trying to shit on the director. I'm not trying to shit on the people who worked on this particular garbage heap. I think that all of them are good writers who just managed to lay, a very, very crappy game, like a very crappy egg, like, this was just awful. And I don't think that there was really any saving it, and so it's just like, yeah, I could invest my time into watching Kingsglaive, but I already feel cheated for the time that I've put into watching this in the first place. I don't feel that this storyline really has anything going for it. It's managed to, I there are other people that would have loved the bromance story, I guess, and would have that perspective on it. I don't give a shit about the fucking bromance. This is not what I wanted at all, and this game being a fucking sausage fest makes it fucking cringe inducing. It is a fucking shit pile. It is awful. And uniquely so. I find myself thinking back and thinking Xenogears was rushed too. I mean, you can feel it being rushed, but it's not like Ellie shows up and then Ellie is instantaneously killed. Like, Like, which is why Xenogears actually comes out as Square Enix's true magnum opus, despite the issues that it has, despite it being less than perfect, but as close to perfection as they have ever come. Was definitely Xenogears. But no, like versus like not versus 13, but like this Final Fantasy 15 thing, it is not worthy of the title Final Fantasy. It is just complete relentless garbage, and you know, I'm not a nostalgia nerd who's sitting here like, oh yeah, the combat system's shit, because guess what? I didn't play 16. I watched a let's play because I don't like the combat anymore with the fucking action based combat. I prefer turn based games and everything, and I love that sort of combat style, but I realize that I'm in the minority at this point. I'm a niche sort of audience. And I'm fine with not necessarily being, a member of the majority in that regard. I don't need to be. I mean, I don't really care about that. But, the frustration that I feel with 15 has nothing to do with the combat system. That's not why I fucking hate this game. I fucking hate its plot. Its plot is literally the worst storyline I have ever seen out of them as a company, and there's really nothing about it that's worth, saving at all. You couldn't, like, in order to fix this storyline, you would, like, literally have to bring, like, Luna Freya would, like, you'd have to axe the elements that removed her from the storyline instantly, patch her back in, you know, like, bring her online for quite, and into the party for a much longer period of time. I mean, they completely destroyed anything that I personally could have latched onto when it comes to the storyline, and I walk away from it feeling that most everything behind it was ultimately forgettable. I don't care about literally any of the characters. I fucking hate them, and it's so great that we after that disaster we ended up with 16, which for all of the complaints that I might be able to muster about the game, like having a less than perfect villain and everything else that's wrong with its plot, its characters are memorable. You like them. You like the team that you're with. You're able to ultimately bond with the characters. It's so refreshing to see that if this was not the best Final Fantasy that you've set through lore wise, it is at least worthy of the title Final Fantasy.